Well, our session was about enabling data sharing, and the session started about the principles of open data, and that data should be made available for clinicians to use and researchers to use. They were all learning from that and ultimately delivering better patient outcomes in the end. Genomics has always been based on open data sharing from the very first human genome that was sequenced. That's still freely available. I think now there's some technological challenges because by 2030 we're expecting 60 million whole genomes to have been sequenced, and so the challenge is to sort of retool the sector so we're able to use that vast amount of data to manage it and interpret it. The model to date has been to bring the data into central repositories, and then researchers access those repositories. So the model moving forward is more of a federated system where data will be in databases throughout the world, and you'll be able to go in through a single computer interface and search those databases globally. So taking your analysis to the data rather than bringing the data to your laptop. So that's one way we can retool, certainly. Other ways we can move into the cloud. We can instead of looking at entire human genomes, we can stream certain bits of multiple genomes, so we're not looking at such massive files. We are also talking about that some data cannot move, and it shouldn't move because it's, and so we talked about the security frameworks you have to have around these data. And another way to enable data sharing is to authenticate individuals so they're bona fide scientists and can go in and look at these data. So there's many technical challenges, but there's lots of opportunities to overcome these, and we just need to be using the same standards and the same toolkit so we can all utilize the same data sets. Obviously, it's working with government, particularly on the regulatory aspects, because another challenge is obviously the general data protection regulation that's coming in next year, and that that is a good thing, but it's how we work with governments to shape that, to look at so that research and healthcare aren't hindered, but are enabled and supported, but that individual patients feel that their data is secure and respected. So we are working with governments. Obviously, healthcare is funded by governments as well, and there's a lot of expertise in the research sector in genomics. There's a lot of clinical expertise in the clinical sector, and so we need to work with governments as well to bring these two teams together and to share that expertise to the benefit of patients. We had a fantastic patient talking in this morning's session, and she was adamant that patients want their data to be used, and she wants to demand that her data is used to benefit other patients. But she wants reassurances that we will use that data securely and we will share it responsibly. But she sees that data as valuable to helping other women in her situation. And I think that's the general sense we do get from the public. Even when we go out and ask not just patients but the wider publics about data sharing, and there is an assumption that that patients assume we already do this. And so that's another way we need to work with governments to ensure that the will of the people and the understanding of the people is implemented into legislation. Potentially, but it would be much better if there was just a better dialogue in the first place. That dialogue, we as scientists, we need to understand patient worries and concerns, and then we've also got a responsibility. Genomics is a new thing coming into the healthcare sector. We have a responsibility to have that dialogue with patients and with the publics as well, that genomics is coming to a doctor's surgery near them in the next 10 years. So we need to be having a better discussion and better informing both sides of this. Another aspect we did cover was, obviously, we were very much talking about data sharing, enabling data sharing, open data, but then we still had a discussion that you can build commerciality on open data, and that businesses can be built on open data, and having the know-how and the expertise and having how you aggregate, interpret and analyse that. So again, we need to work with governments to foster the best environment for startup companies and for large companies to utilise these data for not just the health of nations but also the wealth of the nations as well. No, we all need to play in this ecosystem if we want better patient outcomes for patients, which is what we're all working towards. The research sector cannot do it alone. We need to work with industrial partners to develop these drugs, get them through clinical trials for the ultimate benefit of patients. We're all in this together, really. Well, next year in 2018, the Sangar Institute is 25 years old. So the Institute obviously started as the Sangar Centre and was the largest single contributor to that first human genome that was published 20 odd years ago. And since then we've built on our foundations and improve human health by understanding the genomic sequences of humans and pathogens. To celebrate our 25th anniversary, we've gone slightly off-piste, and we're going to sequence 25 genomes of species from around the British Isles. So the robin, squirrel, blackberry, things like that. And we've got a public vote ongoing with school children to help us select these 25. And it brings together this sort of Sangar's heritage of DNA sequencing, but it's also a way of celebrating the UK and also bringing school children into genomics in a non-health related way, and to enable them to understand that we're all made from the same genetic code, and also these genomes can go back into the natural history, natural biologists, and they can use them for their research as well. So it's a celebration of sequencing and Sangar. Obviously, business as usual continues. We work in cancer, we work in ageing, common genetic disease, very rare genetic disease, and we have fundamental programs. A really exciting project at the minute is the Human Cell Atlas. That's taking each individual cell from the human body, there's trillions of cells, and sequencing each one individually to give you a Google map of the human body. So you can zoom in and see that's a liver cell, but it's a liver cell from the top left quarter of that liver, and the potential there for medicine and understanding are enormous. So a very exciting time to be at the Sangar. It's a global project, so again, I think it's decades long possibly, yes, but that's the sort of scale we like to work at.